Hashem Svasai Tivtach Ufia Gital Sacha. We're now in the 6th parak of Nechemiah. In this parak, we have that Sinbalat and Tuvia and Geshem, the Arabi. Remember, these are the merry men who wreak havoc on the Jews and what are happening. So they are our enemies. The Yeter Abinu, everyone else, they hear Kibanisi Esochama, that we have actually completed the wall. Now, how can they know? Because they see that Jews are carrying on Shabbos, so they recognize, if they are, that means that there are no gaps in the wall, and now the only thing that is left is b'dilatzot lo amati b'sha'arim, and that we haven't yet put the doors in the gates. So it's still a time when they are getting involved and trying to slow down the process or completely derail the process. There's just a little bit of time. There's a small window left. Now, Sinbalat and Geshem are the ones that send a message. Now, where is Tuvia? So Tuvia, as we'll see, he has his limits, perhaps. On the one hand, we could say, remember who he was. He had his family marry into the family of the Kohen Gadol, and so he's, right now he's still uber successful, and so he doesn't want to kill Nechemiah, as we're going to see. Sinbalat and Geshem are trying very hard to actually kill Nechemiah, or on the other hand, he's kind of in the background because he's going to be the actual one to take part in and skillfully get rid of Nechemiah. So he has to kind of be in the background right now. But essentially, what do they tell him? They say, you know what? Why don't we meet in Kiphirim, in the valley of Ono, and Nechemiah is not an idiot, so he says, you know what, I'm really, really busy. I'm busy of doing a work project here. I really can't come down. So, you know what would happen if I did? I'm doing a malacha gdola, and if I come down, then all of the work is going to cease, and I can't let that happen. Now, that's also kind of like sticking it to him, because he's suggesting that, I don't want the work to cease, meaning that is the only reason that they're calling him. And that's why they're angry with him. And so he really gives it to them, which again highlights that, what is the Jew in Gullus to do? But look danger right in the face and not back down from it. And that's exactly what Nechemiah teaches us to do. But of course, they send messages 4 times. And all the time, Nechemiah answers them the same way. And finally, B'pama Chamishis, they send it in a different way. This time, they are so angry that they send an open letter. And this open letter is there as a sign of complete disrespect. And it is to say that, you know what, we know, Katuv Babagoyim, that we heard among the other nations, the Gashamu Omer and Geshem says that you and the Jews are planning a revolt and that you're building the wall. And why? So that because really you want to be their king. You have taken it to another level, and this is a level of rebellion. Again, what do anti-Semites say is that you are rebelling against us and that you are aspiring to be the king and to declare your reign. Which is very interesting because we've said all along that there's a possibility, not all the Mefarshim feel this way, but there's a possibility that who was Nechemiah? He was Zerubbabel, and Zerubbabel was from the Shevet of Yehuda, and he was in a prime position, and he could have been the king had more people come up with Shivat Zion. So on the one hand, that would actually make some sense. Now, was Nechemiah thinking that? Well, ultimately, he could have. That's an interesting approach. He is the political leader. He is the secular leader. He is doing a very good job leading the people in a way that highlights that he could be a great king. But we know that unless, we know that it would actually even fit better in about 500 years from now when there's the Bar Kokhba revolt. We know that they were taken and they were punished because they were not in the position to be part of the Melucha. And he actually is definitely more fitting for him to be the king. But there's the other opinion that says, no, of course not. He would never think that way. And he was really just planning, if everything is good and he's needed, he would go back down and continue to be the cupbearer, because that's a good role for him, and he was, completely okay with it. But in the meantime, this is just an anti-Semitic public outcry, and that really all you have been doing is that you've been calling out to your Nevi'im. And here it's more like Begam HaNevi'im Haman Tzalekro. These are not Nevi'im themselves, not actual Nevi'im, but it does highlight that the word Navi is mentioned a bunch of times, and the idea is that we're waning in Nevuah. Nevuah is leaving, right? That's why the Anshe Knesset Agdola have created. They create tefillah, and they create brachos and kiddush and havdalah, because we need some level of communication, because Hashem is hiding himself slowly, but there are Nevi'im, and the idea here is that he's using this concept to highlight that that really what you really want to do is you want to be the king, and everyone is coming together, and that's really what it's a call against our king. And so what did I do? So Nechemiah says, well, I sent a letter back saying that never happened. You've made it up, and it's all from your own heart. That is absolutely not true. But the intimidation is pretty significant. And so what does he do? He goes to the house of Shemaiah ben Zaliah. And who is he? Now, he is a guy who is, he's confined to his house. Now, why is he confined to his house? So some say, because how do we get Nevuah? So the people, if they were to get Nevuah, they would have to really sequester themselves. They have to completely isolate themselves from all Gashmias, and so he really did want to tap into that small power of Nevuah that is still kind of percolating in society, and there were definitely people who were trying to do that, and there was the possibility still of some level of Nevuah. But anyway, so he comes to Shemaiah, and he asks him, and Shemaiah says to him, listen, why don't we meet in the house of Hashem inside the Heichal? We'll lock the doors, and so don't worry, if they're coming to kill you, they won't be able to, and they're really coming soon, so you really should come with me soon. Now, va'omra ha'ish kamoni ibarach, and so what do I say to him? And this is a very important point, because what is this guy? This guy is in the guise of being a real Navi. He's pretending he's a Navi Sheker. And so, again, the idea is that we have there are temptations, there are so many bad influences, there's so much that Nechemiah deals with, which is really, again, highlighting, why are we even telling the story? We're telling it for Ladoros, we're telling it for us. So there are people that look like they are doing the right thing, that they are Besser mentioned, that, they're holy, and they are, saying B'Shem Hashem, and oftentimes that's exactly how the Yetzer Hara gets us and makes us believe. But if you listen to what he's saying, first of all, Nechemiah is from Shevet Yehuda. He can't be going into the Heichal. He certainly is not going to be closing the door, because that would kill him anyway. And if you say, like, okay, maybe that would be the way that Hashem would save him, but Hashem wouldn't do that to put him in a position where he's violating such a really important principle. There would have to be another way. So he reads between the lines, and he understands. And more importantly, why would he lock himself in a room with someone who he doesn't trust? That is just a recipe for disaster anyway. So in any event, he says to him, absolutely not. I would never run, because that's not what a leader does. A leader doesn't run. A leader stays and fights for his people. And so, of course, I recognized, Nechemiah says that it couldn't have been that Hashem sent him. And that really, who was it? It was Tuvia and Sinbalat. So here we have again that Tuvia is involved in like a sly, matter-of-fact way. He knows, perhaps because, he's been around with the Kohen, with the Kohen Gadol and those people, that he really knows more than Sinbalat and Geshem, because they're not privy to the same level of a plan. And maybe it would have been Tuvia himself that would have, because he was able to kind of get in closer to the Heichal, because he's related to the people of the Kohen Gadol, then, and so Nechemiah reads between the lines, understands, and he says, absolutely not. And he recognizes that it's all done because really this is just to defame me, and he sees between it and he says absolutely not. And so then what does the Jew in Galus do? Remember, we have from Yaakov Avinu, L'doron l'tfila u'l'machama. So we have an understanding here that as soon as times are bad, first of all, he starts to fight. He says absolutely not. He's not swayed in any sort of way, and then he davens. And he davens and he says, please Hashem, please remember all of the bad that Sinbalat did and Tuvia did. And then he mentions Noadiah, who's a Neviah, again highlighting that we don't know who she really is, some prophetess, but some say that, that it was Shemaiah from in the beginning of the parak. But the understanding is, again, she's a Neviah, meaning B'yetzer HaNevi'im Asher Hayu Me'urei Mosi. There are a lot of Nevi'ei Sheker. People are trying to still tap into that last remnant of Nevuah. And ultimately, he davens to Hashem and he says, please just help me against these people who have caused me so much fear. And it does. It goes away. Baruch Hashem, he's able to sustain his role, and the wall is completed on the 25th of Elul in 52 days. Some say it's 52 days. It took 52 days. Some say that's not the way that you counted the 52 days. But nevertheless, they're able to build it. And then, so that's the enemy from perhaps from without, right? Our external enemy. But then there's also what happens for the rest of the parak. It's very interesting because the Sinbalat and Tuvia, they are very upset. But what are they going to do? And then in those days, there are letters that were sent to Tuvia, keeping watch of everything that Nechemiah was doing. Now, sometimes it was in the good, and they would say good things. But a lot of times, so people would tell Nechemiah what was going on with Tuvia, and people would tell Tuvia what was going on with Nechemiah, highlighting that Nechemiah has to watch his back, because Igros Shalach Tuvia Li'Yar'ini, because Tuvia is still sending him bad letters. People are kind of tattling or, keeping tabs on Nechemiah. So Nechemiah understands the idea that, we have the external enemy, the Goyim, but oftentimes some of our worst enemies and our worst experiences are the enemy from within, Jews that feel that it is okay to go against other Jews. And, he has to keep watch of it. He doesn't say anything. He kind of like keeps them, one eye on them and on just to make sure. And he reads into the situation. He keeps abreast of what's happening. But it's a very sad, sorry state of affairs that he has to really be considering and worrying about the Jewish people within his midst. Now, Tuvia is is in the elite. He is married. His daughter is married or was married to the Kohen Gadol. The children, the grandchildren are mamzerim. It's a very complicated, not great picture. But at the end of the day, there are people who really like him, and because he has good yichus, he at this point, or good connections, I should say, familial connections, they are going against Nechemiah, not purposely, or perhaps purposely, but just because it's all gossip, it's all rumor mill, and it suggests that as far as Nechemiah has come with the enemy from without, we have to, unfortunately, the Jew in Gullus has to also highlight and recognize the enemy from within, and that concludes this parak.